Welcome to Season 2 of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. In this second season, we're going to be talking about secrets of success from some of the most successful chiropractors that I have known from around the world. We're also going to be talking about some of the things that you can do on a week-by-week basis to make your practice the best that it's ever been. So let's get started with today's show. Welcome to another episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I continue to work in $1 million practice that I built, ran, and sold. I've taught, lectured, and coached our profession, and helped so many chiropractors build the practice and the life of their dreams. And now, I want to help you do the same. So here's today's show. Welcome back to the first episode of the second season of For the Love of Chiropractic. If you've been one of our long-term listeners from all around the world, I want to say thank you, welcome back. Hope you had a wonderful holiday season and a wonderful New Year's. If you're one of our newer listeners, I'll wish you the same thing and encourage you to go back and listen to some of the episodes from last year. There's a ton of information to help you make your practice better. What we're going to be doing here in Season 2 is week by week, we're going to have guest interviews of some of the most successful chiropractors that I could possibly find to talk to them about what they do, what they think in their practice, how they work with their patients to create their most successful practices and their best years ever. But the full season won't be just guest interviews. There will still be action-packed episodes with lots of information that you can take directly from the show and put directly into your practice to start making your practice better right there on the spot. So as we start digging in here in January of 2025, we've closed the book on 2024. It's in the past, it's over, it's up on the shelf. I'm going to encourage you, if you haven't reviewed your statistics from last year and from the last couple of years, take some time to do that. Because unless you're brand new in practice, you have valuable information of an annual basis of exactly what your practice did, what you, your team, and the practice did all last year. You know what your new patient volume looked like, not just for the whole year, but even month by month. You know what your regular patient visits looked like for the entire year, for the entire month, and even week by week. And you also know your services, how much service you provided, and what that translates to into income, as well as you should be keeping track of, you need to be keeping track of the income. I've known practices over the years that just provide service, don't really keep good records, and the money just sort of rolls in, and they have no idea of how much they should be expecting or what their collection ratio is, services versus the amount they're collecting. And that is so critically important, because if you're not doing that, whether you know it or not, you're heading towards bankruptcy. You don't know what's coming in, when it's coming in, or how much is coming in. And that's just plain dangerous. No business can go long-term and successfully work that way. It's a recipe for disaster. But what I want to spend more time talking about today is not the things that didn't work. Yes, we want to identify those. Now that we've opened the book on this new year, the question is, what are we going to change? Because we're staring in the mirror and we're honestly saying to ourselves, I know that just doesn't work, or it doesn't work good enough, and I'm willing to change it. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to change the things we do, the way that we do them, for a better outcome. So many of the doctors that I talk to will say, I just need more new patients. And maybe that's true, and maybe it's not true, but that's not the first thing to look at, the gross number of new patients that are walking into the office. The first place that I want you to start analyzing your practice is what's your conversion rate? A person who walks into the office in some way, shape, or form is desirous of your care. You have convinced them by some measure, in some way, they walk in with the belief, I think this doc can help me. I think I need their help with something. So the fact that they're walking into the office, they're taking time out of their busy day, they already have said, so I want your help, doc. What's your conversion rate? And what I mean by that is they go from, hi, I'm here, and I'll tell you my story, that initial history, to through the exam process, all the day one stuff, the day two reported findings, to yes, shake hands, we're on board together. That's the first statistic to look at, because if it's anything less than 99%, then there's room for improvement because you're missing something. I know some successful practices that their conversion rate is down around 50%. I know practice that makes a ton of money and their conversion rate is only down around 1/3. Imagine what would happen if either of those practices doubled their conversion rate from 1/3 to 2/3 or from 50% to 100. Literally, you've doubled your practice. By doing that one piece, these are people who have already walked into your office thinking they need your help. So that's the very first thing that I want you to look at to improve your practice this new calendar year, if that's where you need to be. If your conversion rate is already high, terrific, and by high I mean anything above 80%, I think is acceptable. Again, I think it should be closer to 100, but if you're in that upper 80%, you're doing something right already. There are probably other areas you can focus on to improve the practice even more. So now the second thing to look at as we're going into this new calendar year is the capacity of the office. And when we talk about capacity of the office, there's two sides to look at. Number one is inside your own head. How many people do you want to be helping on an hourly, daily, weekly basis? And the most successful chiropractors that I've ever known say something like, I want to help as many people as I possibly can. That's my mission. Doesn't necessarily have to be with your own two personal hands. Maybe you have a team of associates or partners that work with you in order to get this all done. Maybe you're the only doctor adjusting in the office, and that's terrific, if that's what you like. And you have a team of CAs up to whatever your state law says is allowed to do all of the other ancillary procedures if you're providing those in your office as well. But it comes back to what's in your head first. Your head and your heart, and that gets transmitted into your hands. How many people do you want to be helping? What's your vision for what this practice or your company should be doing? Now, once we've got that piece handled, then the second piece of the capacity thing is to look at the physical capacity of the office. So on an ongoing basis, on an hourly basis, during the crunch times, which by definition are the first hour that you're open in the morning, the last hour that you're open at the end of the day, and by the way, the first hour that you're open of each shift, actually, and the last hour that you're open of each shift. What's the capacity there? Because people don't stream in evenly throughout the day. They're crunched together, typically earlier and later in each shift. So what's your capacity during those times? And is there a way to speed up and improve the capacity in those times? And that's a rhetorical question because I already know the answer is yes, it can be improved. There's always a way to improve that and clean it up, make it more user-friendly for the patients, make it easier for the staff, and more calm and easy for the doctor as well. And why wouldn't you want to provide the most outstanding experience for the patients, for the staff, and making your life as easy as possible as you provide the phenomenal chiropractic care that's the mission and purpose of your entire professional career. So looking at this capacity piece, there's a couple different pieces to look at. Number one is the turn time of each of the different segments. And what I mean by that is have your staff time you. On average, how long are you in the room with the patient? If you're doing an adjustment, it takes a certain amount of time based on your technique. If you're doing soft tissue, it takes a certain amount of time based on your technique. If you're doing stretching with the patient in the adjusting room, it takes a certain amount of time. Also, some of these are timed codes, so you need to be cognizant of that. So you're putting that in appropriately. But let's assume you're adjusting the patient, and that's the only procedure you're offering in the adjusting room. And they time you from the time you walk in the room to the time you walk out of the room. That's reviewing the chart, chit-chatting with the patient, doing the adjustment, updating the chart today, and walking out of the room. Some of the most efficient offices I know do a turn time of 4 to 5 minutes. Some are 6. But let's say it's a turn time of 5 minutes because that makes it really easy. If the doctor is in and out of the room in 5 minutes, because it doesn't take longer than that to do an excellent adjustment and to note it properly when you have the pieces set up properly, if that's the case, and you're doing electric stimulation with the person also in another room, how long is that electric stim going to be? Well, I recommend it's a multiple of 5 minutes. Whether it's 5 minutes, that's too short. 10 minutes, that sounds good. 15 minutes, if that's what they need. 20, okay, if that's what they need. But now you know how many electric stim machines you need based on your turn time of 5 minutes. Think back to your chemistry days. There's a rate limiting step that we all learned about in college when we had to take chemistry. If you can speed up the rate limiting step, you've cleared out that capacity block. So if you're doing traction and it's based on a 5-minute turn of adjusting, then the traction time should be about 10 minutes, unless you want to do 15. Again, it's a multiple, but it tells you how many you need. So in the case of a 5-minute adjustment and a 10-minute traction time, you would need 2 traction tables for each one adjustment that's being done, because that keeps it moving during your high volume time, during the time when most people want to see you. You can do the same math with the number of ice packs or hydroculator packs if you're providing ice or heat. Now, of course, you also need to have some additional in there for regeneration time for the pack to sit in the freezer or time for the pack to sit in the hot water. But you can see what we're talking about. Also create a system of where the used ones go so the CA can quickly get the next one when they're ready for it without wasting any time. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about helping as many people as we can and improving the capacity block. And as we're talking about capacity blocks, the other thing to look at is your scheduling. I have known lots of offices that schedule precise times for the patient to see the doctor. So for example, if it's a 5-minute turn, the patient has an appointment at 10 o'clock, at 10:05, at 10:10, at 10:15. And while that is very nice for the doctor's schedule, it does not work in the real world. What works the absolute best in the real world is if you know it's a 5-minute turn, schedule 6 patients at 10 a.m. and schedule 6 patients at 10:30 a.m. because somebody is going to be 15 minutes early and they can get right in. Somebody else is going to be 10 minutes early and they can get right in. 5 minutes early, right on time, 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, and so on. That cluster booking gives the freedom to the patient and makes you user-friendly, as we've talked about on previous episodes. As long as you're here within a 15-minute window of your appointment time, you're right on time. You don't need to stress about it. And people really appreciate that. And while it's great for the patients, it frees the office up to work more efficiently. And that's what we're talking about, helping as many people as we possibly can as efficiently as possible. So if you've looked at your conversion rate, and then you've taken a good hard look at the capacity blocks of the office, the next thing to look at is your chiropractic philosophy. What is it you and your doctors are providing to your patients? Is it strictly relief care? Is it relief with correction? Is there strengthening in there? And is it maintenance? How many of those phases do you believe, does your education tell you that you're then giving to the patients in their recommendations in the report of findings? And if you have not listened to the episode from season 1 called The Report of Findings with Crystal Clear Communication, I'll encourage you to go back and do that as soon as you get to the end of this episode. The reason being, once you know what you're doing, to give that report of findings with beautiful clarity leads to the higher conversion rate that we started talking about at the beginning of this episode. When they know and understand what's wrong and what you can do to help them, they're thrilled that they found you and your office. And you can even say to them, I've been here for 20, 30 years. I'm glad you're finally here. So having looked deeply at your own personal chiropractic philosophy, what do you recommend for your own children? How often do you adjust them? Then you can start to wrap your head around how many visits you think any particular person needs. In statistical purposes, obviously that's called the PVA, the patient visit average. How many visits do patients stick around for in your office? Or with any chiropractor for that matter, but obviously you're most concerned about your own personal practice. So how many visits is that? What is the PVA of the practice? You may think that you have a chiropractic philosophy that goes beyond what any of the Palmers personally had, DD or BJ or any of the Palmers. But when you look at your PVA, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's what you're communicating to your patients. That's what they've come to understand. That's what they believe that they need based on the information you have shared with them up to the point that they drop out of care. What I can tell you is if your patient visit average is less than 12, what it means is you're providing strictly acute care pain relief. People come in with a pain, you reduce that level of pain, and they go about their business. And while you've helped them with that level of pain, I believe you have only minimally changed their life. They could have taken aspirin, ibuprofen, Motrin, any of the over-the-counter medications and gotten similar pain relief. While the adjustment is far superior to any over-the-counter medication, what's the long-term benefit of just a handful of adjustments? That's up for the researchers to be able to speak on and decide. But clearly, longer-term care is more beneficial for long-term health. As the research study that was done by Medicare years ago shows, seniors who are under maintenance care live longer, spend fewer days in the hospital, and take fewer drugs. So longer care, more visits, helps to keep a person healthy. Going to the gym and exercising one time certainly has some positive effect on the tissues of the human body. But ongoing working out at the gym, ongoing exercising, physiologically has a much better effect. And an adjustment is not exercise. An adjustment has that neurobiomechanical input, both on the afferent and efferent system, to change and improve the way each individual person's body is working. And as a doctor, isn't it our job to make sure that each person's body is working as close to its optimum as it possibly can, for as long as it can, for each day the person is living to help them have the maximum life? I think so. And if you don't want to provide maintenance care in your office, you don't have to. But at the very, very least, you should be telling people that they should be receiving it. Now, if your PVA is greater than 50 for your practice, congratulations. Your patients have some good idea about maintenance. How long they stick around. I know doctors who have PVAs over 100. People choose to continue receiving care from this doctor's office for years and years. In fact, I know offices that take care of multiple generations. The most that I've heard of is 5 generations at any one time of people from families that are under the care of a specific chiropractor. By the way, if you have more than 5 generations under care in your office, I want to hear about it. Shout out to you, and I'll mention it on a future episode if you'll just simply contact me via the website or the Contact Us button on where you're receiving your podcast from. And now that we've talked about all of these things, the final thing for you to look at as we go into this new calendar year of 2025 are your fees. This is a for-profit business. While we're providing phenomenal health care, as we've talked about in the past, it's not why we became doctors, but by providing phenomenal health care and caring about people, we get paid for what we do. Because healthcare, for better or for worse, is a bodies for bucks business. The more people you're taking care of, the more money you get paid. And I think you should be providing phenomenal care to as many people as possible. And for that dedication, certainly you should be well rewarded. You're giving up your time, your expertise, and you need to be compensated for that fairly. There's an old axiom about providing phenomenal care, providing exceptional care, and charging a fair fee. Would you pay to see you? I love being in a room with a patient and knowing that the care that I'm providing is a bargain. They're lucky to be getting this much great care at the price that's being provided. Now, and there has been inflation in most of the world over the past year. So what is the fee you are charging? Maybe you do need to raise it. And if you do need to raise it, I do not want you to put a sign on the front desk. I simply want you to personally tell each patient, by the way, for 2025, our fee has gone from X to Y. I'm sure you understand. And that's all the explanation necessary. Everybody understands that fees go up. Everybody understands things get more expensive. If your state law or your province requires that you post a sign, so be it. But that personal conversation, we need to raise our fees because our expenses have gone up. We work to keep our fees as low as possible. We've gone from X to Y. I'm sure you understand. And you'll be surprised. Everybody will say, "Yeah, I get it, Doc." And as we close out this episode, the reason that we're looking at these things is because I want 2025, I want this new calendar year to be the best year ever in your practice. And if you do the same things you did last year in the same way that you did them and expect a different result, you know that's called the definition of insanity. So let's make a conscious decision to really look at and change the things we need to change to be the best we possibly can be, providing outstanding care for our patients. And I'll look forward to speaking with you next week. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.